Hey everyone, welcome to the Breaking Moment podcast. My name is Regine Bowe, and I am a social worker who wants to give you hope, encourage you, and help you feel less alone in your healing journey. This podcast is dedicated to helping you heal, learn, and grow to become a better version of yourself. Through education and personal experience, I will discuss topics around mental health and spirituality. So, let's get started on today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 4. Before we get started, I just want to thank everyone for all the encouraging words and just showing support as I just launched the Breaking Moment podcast last week. And if this is your first episode listening, I recommend you listen to the other 3 and see what you think. So on today's episode, we are going to talk about the better version of you and the truths about healing and growing. We will go over what comes with the better version of you. You know, we talk about obviously the positives of any change and showing up differently in the world, but we're going to go over some of the negatives. We're going to tie that to the grieving process and how that can affect you with letting go parts of yourself. We're going to go over healing, and we're going to go over how trusting God in this process is so important. And lastly, we're going to talk about the fear that comes with a better version or a new us, however you want to look at it. Some people might say the new you because you're showing up differently, or some people might say the better version of you, however you like to describe it as. But we're going to talk about the fear that is associated with it as well. So we're going to take this back. Raise your hand if you've read The Very Hungry Caterpillar. This is one of my favorite childhood books. Like, I just always loved the idea of caterpillar eating everything. I mean, eating for days and then going in a cocoon, and then boom, he's this beautiful butterfly. I always loved it. And obviously, as I got older, I started to understand the meaning of it. I actually remember in school, I want to say it was maybe middle school or elementary school, we had a caterpillar in there and we got to watch it, eat and watch it when it went in the cocoon, and then watched it go into a butterfly, and we let it out afterwards. But I remember we had that in school. I'm not sure if your guys' school did that, but I thought that was so cool at a young age. But now that I'm older and I can dive deep and really understand the meaning of it, I think it's really cool tying the two together. So today we are going to tie the butterfly and the caterpillar to today's topic. So I want you to think about a little caterpillar, right? And how it turns into a butterfly. There's 4 life stages to a butterfly. There's the egg stage, the larva stage, the pupa stage, and the adult stage. The egg stage is from 3 to 7 days. The larva stage, which is also known as the caterpillar stage, is from 2 to 5 weeks. And this is the most dangerous stage because of the mortality rates are high. Then there's the pupa stage, also known as the chrysalis stage, and that's around 1 to 2 weeks. And lastly, there's the butterfly stage, or the adult stage, as some might say. I'm going to go in depth about these stages, and we're going to tie it to how we have to change to become a better version of ourselves. So obviously, it starts in the egg stage, right? It doesn't go egg stage, butterfly stage for a reason, because there's things that the caterpillar needs to do. So egg stage, they're just coming out of the egg. Larva stage is more when, remember the Very Hungry Caterpillar, when he ate the muffin and the blueberry and the hot dog, he literally ate everything. So that's that caterpillar stage. He was just eating and eating and eating and eating. Obviously articles have it in more depth, but this is just kind of like the summary of what's going on in each stage. And then in the pupa stage, 1 to 2 weeks is when they're in that cocoon, right? They kind of make that J shape. They might be hanging from a tree or hanging from something, some type of limb or something. And that's when they're changing, they're forming. This stage is what's linked between the caterpillar and then when they become a butterfly. And then once they become a butterfly, it says on average, they can last 2 to 3 weeks, but it depends on the species because it could be several days to 11 months. There's a reason that there's stages. And think about us. In order to become a better version of yourself, you're going to have to change something. If you wanted things to stay the same, you would just continue doing the same things, right? If you want to become better, if you want to show up differently in the world, something has to change. If you wanted to stay the same and do the same thing, then you don't need to change. But in order for that caterpillar to become all the way to a butterfly, it had to go through stages of change. Just like when we talked about in episode 1, the stages of change. That's something that we have to do in order to become a better version of yourself. Point blank, period. Like, something's got to change. Whether it's a dramatic change, that's up to you. Whether it's a little change, it's up to you. But remember, something has to change. I'm tying the butterfly and the caterpillar to us because it's a process. Same with the caterpillar. It's a process. It took time. Some stages took more weeks than others, but it's a beautiful process and it's totally worth it. Think about it. When you see a caterpillar versus a butterfly, you're probably more intrigued by the butterfly, right? But I'm not just talking about it just externally looking in. A butterfly produces more than a caterpillar. Butterflies are able to pollinate and help us grow fruit and vegetables by spreading pollen. A caterpillar doesn't do that. Like I mentioned, a caterpillar just eats. So the caterpillar was just kind of taking things from the environment, eating things up, where the butterfly is producing to the environment, helping us grow fruit, helping us with their vegetables by spreading that pollen. Not only that, but even a caterpillar has a chance to live longer while it's in the butterfly stage rather than all the other stages. Yes, I mentioned on average, it could be 2 to 3 weeks, but also some articles said it could be, depending on the species, it could be several days up to 11 months. So there's still a chance that it can live the longest life it's ever lived in that butterfly stage rather than the caterpillar stage or the egg stage or the pupa stage. I also mentioned that in the caterpillar stage, that's the most dangerous stage. So therefore, if the caterpillar stayed there, it wouldn't even have a chance to pollinate and live life to its fullest potential. Because in that caterpillar stage, it is limited to what it can do in the world. But when it develops and becomes the best version of itself, it's a beautiful butterfly. It helps the planet. It can live longer. Not only that, they can start mating. They can reproduce. So there's something being said even in insects that we could tie it to our human lives, that they have to go through a chain to become what they need to be in the world. Same for you. If you're not happy where you're at, you can make that change, because being your best self is the best thing for you and the best thing for this world. You never know what your best self will produce in this world. You just never know. I like what this article said. It says, according to weaversway.coop, and this is an article that talks about butterflies and caterpillars and the stages. It says, while the caterpillar takes from the world the resources it needs for survival, butterfly gives back, helping produce the next generation of plants. So that just goes to show you that the caterpillar in its stages before does more of taking things to survive, right? There's nothing wrong with it. It needs to survive. But once it gets to the butterfly stage, to its last stage of life, that's when it gives back. That's when it's living its best life. That can be the same for you. Where you are now, if you want to become better, you never know what that looks like. That could be, say you finishing school leads you to helping others that went through what you're going through. Say you moving, even though moving's scary, you moving gives others opportunity to hear your story in a different state. Like, depending on what you're changing, depending on who you are, your best version can do so much in this world. And I just highly encourage it, because yes, it's scary, but you know what's more scarier is being stagnant and not living life to your full potential. Like, you want to get to a point in life where you're like, if life ended, I mean, obviously we don't like thinking about it, but let's be realistic. We are humans. We don't live forever. But can you say that you are living a life that is worth living? You are living a life that if something happened, you are okay with how you lived. That's kind of how you have to go through life a little bit. Like, are you doing the things that you said you wanted to do in life? Are you doing the things that you dreamed about? Or are you staying stagnant because it's comfortable? Are you staying stagnant because you're fearful of the new? What's more fearful? Living a life that you didn't do anything you wanted to do or anything you believed you can do? Or going for it, and then if it doesn't work out, still trying something new, but just knowing that you are doing your best every day is good enough. You know what I mean? Like, want you to think about that. There's a lot of things scary in life, but I think something super scary is just living a life that is not meaningful to you because you're scared of doing better, becoming better, going for that job, going to therapy because other people are going to talk about you. Like, who cares? If you're living a life that you're proud of, why does everyone else matter? This is something that I literally say to myself a lot because I feel like I always worried about what everyone else was saying. But then I got to a point where it's like, all these opinions or all these things that people think I should be doing doesn't matter. It's about my life. They're not living in my shoes, so I'm going to do what I need to do to become the best version of myself because I don't know where that best version might lead me. That might lead me to my dream. That might lead me to seeing myself in a way I never seen, and I love it. So I just want you to think about that. And I wanted to tie it, like I said, I wanted to tie it to that very hungry caterpillar because I think there's something being said about how an insect has to change and how we have to change. And one thing also that the caterpillar didn't just hatch and then turn to a butterfly, right? It took time. Same for you. It's going to take time. It might be a year. It might be 5 years. But no matter what, all you can do is just get one step closer to that better version of yourself because you showing up differently, you doing the things that is meaningful to you. You never know what our world needs. And it might need you to go to therapy so that you can be the best therapist out there. It might need you to start journaling so you can let out all the things that hurt you so that you don't put all those hurts and traumas onto your family and your friends. Everyone's different, but you just have to figure out what you need to do to become the best version of you. Like I said, with this podcast, I want to be completely truthful with you guys. And yes, become a better version of yourself. Healing and growing is great. I think so many people are learning to do that in life. So many people are learning to heal what they need to heal and grow in different ways, which is great. But I think we have to be truthful about what's going on here. And when we become a better version of ourselves, when we're healing, when we're growing, and when we're letting go of a piece of ourselves, and we're letting go life as it was, it's hard. Point blank period. It is hard. I know some people post on Instagram, maybe they're journaling or their healing journey, but like what you don't also see on Instagram sometimes is people's honesty about how hard it is. It can be extremely lonely. It can be extremely frustrated. It can be aggravating. I think you really get a mixed emotions when you are in this process because in order to become a better version of yourself, you are letting go of a life that you once had because you're changing something. So I know we talk about grieving as if we lost someone, like someone died, but we can also tie the grieving process into our healing journey because when we are losing a part of ourselves or we are changing a part of ourselves or we are letting go of a part of ourselves to become a better version of ourselves, it is hard. It is extremely hard. It is frustrating. It is just so many things, guys. And there are 5 stages of grieving according to healthclevelandclinic.org. There's denial, there's anger, there's bargaining, there's depression, and then there's acceptance. And I believe that we can go through those stages while we are letting go of a version of ourselves. Because what if, say you're moving. That's one of the things you need to change because your environment's too toxic or it's time, right? Yes, you're super excited, but what about that life that you lived in the state you were in or that life that you lived in that hometown you lived in? You might get mixed emotions. And so in the denial stage, we know what denial is. We're not owning up to it. Like, no, I don't need to change that. Like, no, it didn't happen. No, I need to be the same. No, why do I really need to change this part of myself? Because what's going to happen? Like, we don't really want to do it. We're in denial. We don't own up to it. Anger. We know what anger is. We're pissed. We're angry. We're mad that this is happening. Bargaining is negotiating with the self to undo the loss. Like, do I really need to do this? Like, maybe if I just do this one thing, I don't have to change this big thing. Depression. We're losing something. We're losing a piece of ourselves. It makes us sad because we're not showing up how we used to show up. And then acceptance. We're accepting that this is how life is. This is where I'm at. And we're going to keep moving forward. So the thing about it is letting go of a part of ourselves we knew. What if you're letting go of a relationship that's part of your change? Say to become a better version of yourself, you're letting go of a relationship. So you might be in denial. You don't want it to happen. It's not happening. Like, I can't do it. You're not believing it. Anger, you're angry. You're angry that it happened. You might start thinking of all the bad things that have happened in the relationship. It makes you mad. bargaining. You kind of negotiate, maybe I could have done something different. Like, maybe if I would have did this, then this wouldn't have happened. Maybe I could have held on because maybe I can figure it out. Like maybe I don't have to in this relationship. Depression. We know what depression is, going in that slump. You're just sitting there, you're thinking about it. You don't want to get out of bed. I mean, everyone's depression's different, but we're depressed about it. We're sad. We're heartbroken. We don't want to maybe try to go out there and find love again. We're done, right? We don't want to deal with it. And we just feel like we don't know what's next, right? And then we accept it. We accept that this is where we're at and this is what's best for you. And we move forward with it. So I just want you to know that there's stages to grieving. And that grieving could be letting go of a piece of yourself that you've known your whole life that right now you're trying to let go. But it's hard because it's hard. It's hard to change anything, guys. I mentioned that a lot in episode 1. It's hard. But there are stages. And grieving it's a journey. So some days you might feel like you accepted it, and then you might go back down to bargaining with it. And so just remember that there's no set timeline, and that if you are grieving something that you let go of, this is normal and you're going to be okay. And you're not alone. You're not alone in it because everyone is losing something. Might not be a loved one. You might have lost a friendship. You might have lost, say you were friends with someone for years, and because of what you're changing, you realize that that friendship serves you no purpose, or maybe you outgrown each other, depending on what it is. Just know that if you are going through stages of grieving, it's normal. It doesn't just have to be associated with the death of someone. It could be associated with you letting go. It could be associated with you becoming that better version of yourself and changing who you are. Think about it. You might have known that relationship your whole life. You might have known that friendship your whole life. You might have known that part of yourself your whole life. So now you're showing up different. And it's not only new to everyone else, it's new to you. So just make sure you're kind. Make sure you know that it's going to be okay. Everyone, I believe, has gone through some grieving stage. Because think about it. We live in a world where people are dying. We live in a world where we're losing friends. We live in a world where people are changing. So you're not alone. I want you to remember that letting go doesn't mean forgetting. So whether you are leaving a job, you're leaving that friendship, you're leaving that relationship, you're leaving that town that you once lived in your whole life, it doesn't mean you forget. I know it's sad to leave something or let go of something, but you can still hold on the good memories that you had. Don't forget that. Letting go doesn't mean you forget it. You still hold on to those things, but you know in your heart that you're doing what's best for you. You're doing what's best for this version of yourself. And that's what's got to keep you going. No matter what, that part of you is still there. We continuously grow, just like the caterpillar grew to the butterfly, just like plants grow, just like insects grow. We are growing. Just like the creatures grow, us humans, we grow. No matter what you're letting go, even if it's that you're letting go of that one memory that you've held on to since you were a child because you were hurt so bad. Remember that you're going to go past it. Remember that there's parts to our chapter. So even though you're closing that chapter, there's a new one that's surfacing. And you can always look back at that chapter in your memories. Think about all the good things that have happened. And you could keep moving forward. So the thing about healing, guys, healing is a lot of things. Yes, it's great. It's so needed in this life. But while there's good days, guys, there are bad days. There's okay days. There's weird days. There's triggering days. You're going to get every single type of day you can think of. And there's going to be a lot of days where you want to go back to whatever you're changing. You're going to go back to the old you or the old things you used to do. Why? Because as humans, we like familiarity. And healing is a journey. It is. It's a journey because you can heal something from a year ago and then something else happened and you got to heal that. And then you might not even know you have childhood wounds and you got to heal those because if you don't heal those, they're going to keep showing up in your everyday life. It's a lifelong journey and it takes time. And it's different for everyone because everyone doesn't go through the same thing. So if you're on Instagram and you're looking at someone's highlight of life where they're like, yeah, I did this and now I'm here. Don't compare yourself to that because you don't know what it took for them to get there. Just because on Instagram, it looks like they did it in a minute or did it in a week. Sometimes healing a specific thing can take years depending on how much it affected you. So it's different for everyone. So don't compare yourself. Think about a wound, right? A wound. Like I know I play so many sports, like I mentioned. And if I, scratch my arm up from sliding in softball, and I call them strawberries. It's like where you get a really, really bad scar. And like day 1, it's bleeding really bad. And then by day 2, 3, 4, it starts getting a little scab. And then it might have gone away. It's not bleeding, but the scar is still there. We can look at that externally, but that also happens internally. So if you get wounded, if you were abandoned and you have abandonment issues, it might not always go away because that's a wound to you. But you can maybe get it to where it's a scar, where yes, you see it, but it's not bleeding anymore. It's not bleeding on your relationships. It's not bleeding on your friendships. You never forget, but you learn to move forward with it. So some of the things that have helped me along this journey is awareness of my growth. So being proud of the little things that I do. Like, I mean, little things that people probably wouldn't applaud because they don't need to applaud, because I know my life story and I know what I went through and I know what I'm trying to overcome. I think you have to remember that. You have to remember what you've been through and where you're trying to get to and all the little steps you are taking to get there, because that's going to get you there. It's not going to be this big thing that happens overnight. Awareness of my growth. Like I said, one of my episodes, I write Post-it notes, and it seemed little, but it was big for me because I had a lot of negative self-talk stem from low self-esteem. So when I continuously showed up for myself and wrote these sticky notes and kept saying, I'm proud of you, kept saying, I love you, kept saying, you're good enough, kept saying, you're amazing. Like whatever I need, I kept showing up for myself. And then little by little, I noticed that I kept saying those things. Even when negative thoughts came or the negative self-talk would come, I noticed that since I've been implanting positive talk in me, my positive words would override my negative. I was aware of those little things that led to bigger growth. Now I'm showing up differently in the world because I believe that I'm good enough now. I believe that my best is good enough. I believe that I don't need to change to fit in. But it wasn't until I started saying those things. Anyone can tell you anything, but if you don't believe it, you will act differently in the world. So some of the things that helped me, like I said, awareness of my growth, being proud of the little things, being kind, being non-judgmental, and no expectations. I didn't put an expiration date on this healing journey. Like, all right, Regine, in 2 years, you need to be good. You need to have this done, because I noticed that I put a lot of expectations on my life before this. Like, I had to have my degree by this time. I had to do this. I had to get the car by this time. I had to move out by this time. And it's just like, and don't get me wrong, I think giving yourself timelines is in some ways good, but I think if we always have like crazy expectations for ourselves, like outrageous all the time, and put so much pressure, so expectations with pressure, I think it can create anxiety. Like, I had crazy expectations, but I put crazy amount of pressure on myself. So I was just living this life of like negative self-talk. I have this crazy expectation, and if I don't do it, here's the negative self-talk. And then it was just a bad cycle that I had. And now I have expectations, but I'm more kind about it. Like, all right, Regine, we're going to do our best to finish this episode by this day. We're going to do our best to hand in this assignment by this time. But it's just the way we talk to ourselves. The way you talk to yourself can go a long way. So then we're going to talk about fear. I don't remember who told me this. I don't know if it was my mom or my therapist, but fear, false evidence appearing real. That's what it is. False evidence appearing real. Fear is associated with anything new, I think. Like, I'm not saying for everyone, but most of the time we get fearful when there's something new happening. We're going to do the new job, right? We're going to a new place. Something about new is fearful. So that better version of you, or that new version of you, you might not even be taking that leap of faith and going for it because you're so fearful of that. It's false evidence appearing real, because obviously if you're not happy where you're at now, what's more fearful? Being where you are, yes, it's comfortable, but you're miserable, or taking that risk and saying, you know what, me doing this, me going to therapy, me moving, me taking this new job might be what's best for me. Fear's scary. Don't get me wrong. That's why I think I stayed the way I stayed for so long, because I was scared. Like, if I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, I felt like, I'm not going to say I wanted to create a podcast at a young age, but I always felt like I wanted to do something like I'm doing right now. But I was always scared because I didn't think that I could reach an audience, or I didn't think that I was good enough to do that. I thought I had to have the 1,000,000 followers. But now that I'm here, I am so happy. Like, I am literally, I don't care if I help one person get better, I'm okay with that. I was so fearful of stepping into this, but I realized that I am more than happy and blessed to be where I'm at now than where I used to be. 1,000%. 1,000%. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I am so much happier now than I used to be. And I was fearful to get here. I was fearful to make the podcast. I was fearful to stop being associated with sports. I was fearful to leave certain friendships, but I'm more better now than I've ever been. And I'm not just saying that. I'm being completely, truthfully honest with you, because I let that fear stop me from taking the next steps. But sometimes when you take the next steps, you're right where you need to be. Sometimes we get off course in life and we think where we are is where we're supposed to be, but you doing the next step might be where you need to be. So just remember, next time you feel fearful, think of it as false evidence appearing real. It might not even be a real threat. You might just be like, oh my God, like if I go to this new place, I'm not going to make new friends and I'm going to be alone, da 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 da. But like knowing deep down, you might be a person that is super outgoing, and deep down you might make new friends, but you won't know till you try. Figure out a way to not let that negative self-talk overtake you, not let that fear overtake you. You got to just go for it. So now we're going to talk about trusting God. God has been the biggest part in my whole entire life and journey of where I am today. Obviously, with fear, you don't know. You really don't know. You could be taking these leaps of faith and it not work out. But you have to trust God that whatever happens, happens for a reason. And the thing about this journey is that's one thing that you can always go back to. There's a lot of things in the world that change. We change jobs, people change where we live. Like things consistently change, but God is the same always. Today, yesterday, tomorrow, he will always be the same. So I think that's been kind of what kept me stable, kept me going, is knowing that no matter what is going on, I know that God is with me, and trusting that there's got to be a purpose out there for me. Even though I'm going through this really hard time, even though nothing seems like it's going right now, I'm trusting that there's a reason for it, and there's got to be something out there. I'm actually going to share something with you guys. For social work, you have to take a licensure, right? To be a licensed social worker. And I failed my licensure, I can share it now, but the old me would have never shared it because I would have let my pride not share this. And, there might be someone out there that is going through this. So I took this licensure and I failed it the first time, and I was really upset. But I studied again, and I was like, I got it this time. I studied again, took it 3 months later, and I failed again. And I was so upset because here I am. I spent 6 years in school, and for me to get to the end where I got my master's degree, and I went through all the stuff I went through, and I thought that this was like where I need to be, and no, I failed. I'm taking a break from it. Like, it's a lot of work. It costs money. But the thing is, I'm saying it to say this, while I was in the period of when I failed the first time and when I took it the last time to now, I started creating this podcast. So it's something about even when we have the failures we have, and even when we go through things that we don't understand, there's a reason for it. And I didn't realize it when I was failing, even though I was upset about it. It made me pour into this podcast, which I literally love. I love this podcast. And it allowed, there's other jobs out there, obviously, where for social work where you don't have to be licensed, but it's just like, it's more complicated. There's not many jobs like that, but and God also opened a door for that where I was able to get a job where I don't have to be licensed right now. So I say that to say, even though things don't look great now, there's a reason for it. There's a reason for why things are the way they are, whether they're bad, they're good. You just got to learn from it and move on. I look back at those times, when I failed, I was really upset, but now I look back at it like, I'm so proud you didn't give up, because I could have literally sat and said, I failed and nope, I can't get a job. I'm just going to sit here and do nothing. Like I could have, because I was really like so upset. Like I failed twice. I wasted money. Like I wasted my time, but it was like in between that time where I was going through it, I poured into something that I really like to do, which is this podcast. And then God also allowed me a door to open where there was a job out there that I didn't need to be licensed right now. So Yeah, I say that to say that God always has a plan. And there's a verse I want to read with you guys. It's from Jeremiah chapter 1-5. And I'm reading from the King James Version. It says, "Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee. And I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations." So pretty much to me, when I read that, I think of God knew us before we were in our mom's womb. That means before we came in this world. Therefore, he knew and knows your anxiety, your fears, your mistakes, your thoughts, every flaw you think you have, every mistake you've had. So even when you think you're not qualified for something, God already knows you think that, and he's still going to guide you and be with you to get to where you need to be. So sometimes, like when I was going through like really, really rough times, I would just remember that, like, you know what, even though I didn't pass my test, like God already knew like I wasn't going to pass, but he knows it. Like I still know there's a purpose out there for me. Like maybe what I learned in social work can help me in my podcast. Maybe there's still a job out there. Like I always would find verses depending on how I felt to keep me going. And just knowing that he knew me before I was in my mom's womb helps me to know that no matter where I go in life, no matter what I do, no matter what I do wrong, he still has a plan for me. He still has a purpose for me. And that's all I need to keep moving forward. And you just have to trust that. Like there's no like guarantee that, you know, this will happen, but it's just about trusting. That's what trust is. Think about when you trust, you know, if you do a trust fall, right? You trust that the person behind you is going to catch you. That's how it is with God. And that's the best way I can explain it. So before we end, some steps to help you with the better version of you and while you're in your healing and growing process. And this is some of the steps that, you know, I've already talked about, but mindfulness, journaling, being kind, speaking to a therapist or someone you trust, speaking about it. So don't hold it in. If you feel like you need to talk about it or write it down, go for it. Changing your perspective and don't rush the process. Guys, perspective is everything because you can keep saying or thinking you're in a same cycle, but if you change the way you look at it and see it as, maybe I need to learn something while I'm in here, it just makes it show up differently, right? Perspective really is the key to how you view your life. Like you can say, oh my gosh, like, okay, for example, like I just said about me failing the test. At first I kept saying, oh my God, I can't pass this test. Like maybe I'm not smart enough. Like, I don't know, like what, I don't know what's wrong. But then I changed the perspective as in like, maybe right now I need to do something else. Maybe I don't need to be at that job. Maybe I don't need to be this licensed social worker right now. Maybe I need to learn what I need to learn for the licensure that I'm actually carrying into this podcast. So maybe what I learned while I studied wasn't a waste. It's helping me with my podcast, but not only that, it's helping me with the job I'm at now. So it's really about perspective. How do you view your life? How do you view what's happening? You can sit here and say, oh my God, I got to change this about myself. And I lost this friend and my life sucks. Or you can say, you know what? I'm so proud that I did that hard thing. And I know it's going to lead me to better. It's really about perspective. It really is. It's how you view your life. Before leaving, I just want you to know that I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you just listening to this podcast and considering changing, considering to become a better version of yourself because the world needs you. The world needs you and you matter. You have a purpose in this life that you might not see right now, but one day it will all make sense. I want you to know that change is not easy, but it's a process. But remember that God is with you, that God has a purpose for you, and God has a plan for you. And healing and growing isn't easy, guys, but it's definitely worth it. And when you contemplate it, I want you to think about the very hungry caterpillar. I remember that just like the caterpillar had to go from an egg to a butterfly, you're going to have to go through stages. But when you get to the butterfly, when you get to that version of yourself, you're going to be so proud. It's going to be worth it. And it's going to be beautiful. And you're going to see how the world around you changes and the amazing things that you can do for the world. All right, guys. Love you all. I'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you for listening to the Break-In Moment podcast. If this information was helpful, please share it with others. And if you enjoy listening, subscribe to the podcast so you can get the latest episodes. You can listen to the Break-In Moment podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Until then, I will see y'all next week.